The fuck?
Hi everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay or Jaylan Salah, as you formerly know her, film critic at Geek Vibes Nation and in Session Film, and also occasionally on Movie John. Now, today we are celebrating Pride as usual. Like on the J Days, Kristen Battistella, your favorite women in session leader. Like the podcast, woohoo, yes, and also your very very famous film critic speaking out. Maybe too often for her own good. However, we always need an outspoken woman. And your friend Jay, we always celebrate Pride by talking about our favorite Pride movies. Movies that arouse our feelings or make us think or make us just enjoy love on screen. Love in all its amazing different forms and expressions. Kristen, I am so happy to have you here, my darling.
Oh, thank you for having me back. Mm.
So, to celebrate Pride, first of all, we always pick movies that we feel are either important, culturally significant, or they are enjoyable and really, really celebrate, let's say, non-heteronormative love in a way that is very daring or, like piercing or just introspective or deep. So, why do you think we pick what we picked today? Because I know your picks and you probably don't know my picks, but my picks are irrelevant because you're the star of the episode. So, why did you pick yours today? What do you think makes them so
Um,
special?
mm. Well, I had this thought, I think, last year when I talked about Tootsie in the Birdcage with our lovely Amy Thomason. Hi, Amy. And I realized that I kind of really apparently like a lot of, I guess, cross-dressing type of films, strangely. So, and I did speak about the Adventures of Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert previously with Amy and Zeta and Dave too on the podcast. I guess I've bounced around everywhere talking about that one because I love it. It's just so wonderful and so feel good. So I don't know what those things say about me being cis hetero that I still kind of, I guess drag is a good gateway to kind of everybody can kind of laugh and enjoy and appreciate that kind of fun. So.
Nothing like a man in a dress. Let's be honest. Like nothing like a man in drag and knowing how to wear it right. Which brings us to our first pick from our dearest Kristen Battistella, which is, of course, if you haven't guessed it, I'm sorry, guys, then you don't know her, you don't know me, you don't know anything about the J Days. Review our previous episodes. The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, directed by Stefan Elliott. Two drag queens played by Guy Pearce and Hugo Weaving, and then you have a trans woman played by Terence Stamp. And this movie, you guys, if you're in a bad mood, if you're in a bad place, if you're in whatever place, just put it on, and I assure you, your mood will be 100% different. So if you haven't guessed that we'll pick a Pearceness mood film for Pride, then I'm sorry, something is wrong with you. Also because he's such an advocate and he always has this sense of righteousness and like he's always out there talking about injustice and prejudice and racism and all the things that everybody hates, but he's not afraid to voice his opinion, so we will pick him as our lead of this fascinating film. Why Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Chris?
Oh, where can I begin? We did actually previously talk about When We Rise, which was a later sort of docudrama kind of series that Guy Pearce is in. He's actually playing a real life AIDS advocate, and I think I even said then of like the difference between the flippant kind of drag queen that is sassy, that he plays here compared to a very serious kind of real life kind of person. And I guess a lesser actor would have, phoned the limp hand kind of in, stereotypical. And, these are very drastically different performances, And this was the first thing I saw Guy Pearce. And I mean, I was like, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. And I didn't know anything about, the drag queen in Sydney, the scene, I had no idea about any of this stuff. And sometimes it took me years to understand everything with the lingo without subtitles. I'm like, what's a donut pusher? I mean, I didn't know what any of this kind of stuff was, but it was like that didn't matter. Because it was just such a beautiful, charming, lovely little film. I mean, it seems weird to say like drag queens are people too. I wrote about this at InSessionFilm.com, and it's kind of funny because now we do have people who wear their red hats. I mean, if people were walking around, advertising what bigots they are, because they do, I would love to just catch people off at the pass and just say, watch Priscilla, and I guess of course we also had our American Tu Wong Fu, that I don't love as much. I did not make the connection with that one the way I did this one. And for me, really, in this movie, I mean, it really didn't hit me with Guy Pearce until I saw LA Confidential, which I guess we also talked about his, should have won awards type stuff before, because to see the difference in, again, performances. But I was really blown away by Terrence Stamp in this movie because he was, Zod, Superman, totally badass, respected, refined English actor, and he's playing a transgender woman in a very delicate, lovely, beautiful performance. And it was just like, and I would watch this movie over and over again. And my sister, the dancer, would be practicing the dance routine. My dad would be like, "Oh my God." My dad's like, "They're not even that very good. They're not good drag queens. They don't, their routines like crap." He's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "But I think that's the point." I just love this. They each have multiple different names, their given name, their chosen name, their stage names, and it's this, when they put on that facade, those ridiculous frocks, it's like, is that who they really are? And it's like, and that how that's bold and challenging, and you have to do what you have to do and be yourself, and the lovely dynamic of, Hugo Weaving's Tick, he's married, what kind of relationship is that? And now it's really, you could almost pare the movie down to how does a father come out to his son? And so there's just so many sweet, charming, lovely things. I mean, there's one, a couple bad scenes of some hate crime kind of things, but that are kind of like, no, no, okay, now's the time to change the channel. Now's the time to step out, take a break. But then there's also really wonderful, really excellent little moments and charming and quipping things. And I always come back to this, and especially recently here in these bad times, Priscilla's available on all like the fast services. I've got multiple different video editions, so it's like, and it shows on different free live streams. So it's like, oh, Priscilla, it's time to tune in. And my husband's just like, not again. Not again.
But what I wanted to know is, do you think we can make another movie like Priscilla now with also the restrictions that I feel like Jonas Stamp is not a trans person. So do you think there would be restriction? And I don't know. This movie is too great to only put in that box. You know what I mean? Just like when you see, for me, my favorite Tim. Wait, Tim Curry in, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. I can't imagine another Dr. Frankenfurter, I'm sorry, because he's just so glorious in drag. He looks amazing in fishnets. He is so sexy. And I've seen other, like roles played by actual trans actors, and they couldn't reach that level of artistry. I'm sorry. So, what do you think now with the restrictions put on roles like
Mm.
that?
That's an interesting question. It's ongoing debate, and I don't know. Today, I feel like it would be serious, or not to say too woke. That's an unfair phrase to say, but it would be, I don't know, dark and gritty. It wouldn't be open and lighthearted and welcoming, I think.
And
And
tongue
actually,
cheeky.
but before Guy Pearce left Twitter, he got chewed out because he actually asked that question on Twitter. He's saying if you're an actor, you should be able to act any part. It shouldn't matter, what any kind of, your handicap or vice versa. You should be able to play any role. And any actor should be able to play any role. And people really got nasty and angry with him. And it made some other big statement apology that said the wrong thing or something. And it's like, well, he wasn't wrong. It was just that Twitter kind of jumped on him, and he wasn't being ableist in
No.
saying that able actors should take, these kind of roles. I'm sorry, forgive me if I'm misterming things here, but it was like Twitter's not the right place to do that, and Hollywood's not ready to make those kind of decisions. I mean, and I've gotten in this argument before with people about Memento, saying that and I'll say, look at this nominee. It's like the way we praise Sean Penn in I Am Sam. And it's like, oh, hello. We reward, Dallas Buyers Club. And it was like, now we look back and think of how cringe that was. Even though,
Awful.
oh shoot, not Helen Hunt, Marsha Hunt, uh, won did she win or was she nominated?
Marcia
She
Gay
was,
Harden. Is that
no,
her?
Marsha Hunt, the short actress in Dune. She was in a role where she was playing an Asian man.
Oh my goodness.
And
Seriously? Wow.
yes, and this was kind of rewarded. I mean, I guess I don't know, Victoria type kind of roles. Like we have kind of looked the other way at this for a very long time. And I had to think about this when you said, okay, well, we could talk about Priscilla again, because I kind of thought, what was my other exposure? I mean, I played ice hockey with lesbians, but I didn't really know that much about gay things, at this age. And I thought, and you think back of something like Three's Company. If you hear any noise here, it's my screaming little kitten
I
Janet
can't
who
hear
refused.
anything I
I'm sorry.
said.
I'm sorry. She refused to go to the vet, so she's in heat, and she refused to fight to get in the carrier. So now she's in heat, screaming and wailing upstairs. Um, but her name is Janet, and Janet Miss Jackson because you're nasty. And but my sister's like, oh wait, Janet like Three's Company, and I was like, if my mother-in-law asked, yes, we'll say Janet and Three's Company because that's kind of tame, that's kind of safe. And to think about how it was, gay was like a joke, kind of mockery type thing back then. Of like, how many times did Roper do the little hand and fairy and tease, So it's like we spent decades doing any kind of rainbow roles in a very derogatory, negative storylines. I love the Dynasty TV show, but it was like they had a gay character, but then it was like, but no, he had to marry a woman, but then no, he had a son, but then he had a boyfriend, but then the boyfriend was murdered, of course,
Of
or something.
course. Because
And but so they had no idea of accepting this bisexual being a thing, in a way it was very, could you choose to be this or that, or it was just very, very, on the one hand, back in the 80s, it was like, oh, what provocative television. But then it was like, oh, wow, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. This did not age well at all. So it's like, for as wrong as we've been, I mean, I guess we should keep trying to tell these stories in better, positive ways with the correct people. And yeah, Guy Pearce has done all different kind of festivals and pride parades and everything like that with community support and trying to get, I mean, that When We Rise was based on the material of the Cleve Jones. So he had, the actual documentation that he was able to source from and everything. So it's like, yeah, I guess we need to be better at these kind of parts, and that's what was really beautiful about Terrence Stamp, an actor you would never expect to be playing a trans woman, but he really thrust himself into the role. Got even kind of upset about it, they wouldn't give him a mirror because they said he actually looked kind of ugly, but he wanted to be, a beautiful woman, and and that comes through in the character, this, and not only a transgender woman, former drag queen, I guess, did the not rock, we would say rockettes here, but les girls, that's what it is. So former drag queen, transgender woman, middle-aged now here, now a widow. So she is at all kinds of crossroads in life, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful, tender performance. So I guess it's unfair to say if you have an actor come at something with respect, yes, that would be wonderful and lovely. Would we like to have the right people cast for the right parts? Yes, of course, excellent. But is Hollywood going to catch up with these kind of things? No. And Priscilla's not a perfect film. I mean, there are a lot of misogynist things. There's the terminology, obviously, is very 90s, very dated, out of touch here. I mean, even they kind of don't address, a bisexual. So which are you? You're married, but you're not. Are you gay or are you not? Like there's all kinds of, mistermed and everything kind of things in here as well, just because of its age. But yet, just the idea that this is just a beautiful, funny thing that kind of gets you in the door to just asking these questions and hey, hey, respect.
Okay, so Priscilla in all its glory is encapsulates all the things that you just mentioned. But I love to take you out of the zone where it's fierceness and the desert and Australia into the world of lesbian films because I feel like even if you're straight, even if you're het, even if you're whatever, lesbian love is something entirely different. When you see two women on screen falling in love and all that like double passion. It really makes a difference, especially when it's done away from stereotypes where one has to be the butch and one has to be, like the feminine. It doesn't work like that. This is why, for me, films like Portrait of a Lady on Fire or no, I know it's very controversial and probably people canceled it now. Blue is the warmest color. I find it very hot. I find it very sexy. But there are films that you feel the feminine passion and it's so arousing, like Desert Hearts, the one that we talked about previously. Bound, for example, where the sexual tension kind of ruled everything. So, what do you think makes a lesbian love story, even to someone who is not a lesbian, even someone
Mhm.
who is like same, like heterosex love, special and very invigorating?
I'm biased because my favorite's the Vampire Lovers, which I know
Yes.
we talked about vampires lots of places elsewhere, and I still think of some of the scenes from Desert Hearts. Just that I'd love to spend 40 more minutes with you. It's
Oh
just like,
my
oh, I
goodness.
think of that all the
Yes.
I think of that all the
Girl.
time. Lovely. I guess that's the thing about Priscilla. There's just certain things that kind of stick with you. Lovely little lovely moments, and I love the Vampire Lovers. I watch it all the time.
We'll get to
And
vampire lovers, Kristen. You will
I
tell
guess
me what makes a les love story special now.
Um, I don't know. It's the difference between pain and nurturing, I guess, to me, which I guess kind of goes hand in hand with kind of vampire materials. I guess I tend to watch more vampire lesbian things, I guess, than I
Why?
do straight lesbian things. Well, I like
Yeah.
vampires. And I guess it's just
You're the mega vampire queen,
vampirism, I guess the blood symbolism maybe lends itself
the
more toward
biting.
feminine kind of stories. You know, so I love the Vampire Lovers, and a very strong performance by Ingrid Pitt, which I think people don't give her a lot of credit. Maybe she didn't have a lot of. I feel like, well, she had a lot of roles, but a lot of roles with her boobs out, or a lot of roles where maybe she didn't have a lot of dialogue. She had her
Just
accents
hot.
maybe may have been difficult for some things, but yeah, a fascinating woman. Wrote a lot of things later in life. Had a very unfortunate kind of life, which she chronicled, but in this, because I watched this one again recently. Give me an excuse to watch these movies again. And she says, everybody dies. You're romantic if you're foolish, if you think that some man is gonna sweep you off your feet, make it like what, because back then, I mean, what did this is like Regency era. So it's like this
What
Carmilla
option do you
retelling.
have?
She kind
Exactly.
of goes to like one house, oh yeah, victimizes the people, then leaves, then moves down the road a few miles later, like Jane Austen, where they just go from one house to the other, but here's it's a vampire. And so what do they have to do? But she's just like reading a book out loud. And it's like, oh, the night came and did this or that. She's like, this is so stupid. This is so silly. You can't depend on, a man to come save you and make everything better, but then she gets really upset with and the way this is shot is surprisingly well done. Roy Ward Baker. Say that three
Yeah,
times
Roy
fast.
Ward Baker Owen.
Um, because there's different like fade through scenes where like she's on one side of the wall, she's in one bedroom, and the girl who's having the nightmares about the cat coming and laying on her chest and biting her is behind the other wall. And there's a couple scenes where she has to go feed on like the local village girl, and it's sort of from her perspective, where the camera's just over her shoulder, where it's like, I don't know, these are the sort of predatory kind of things. But then when you're actually seeing her with the girls kissing her, saying, I love you, and we pick up on just the different kind of touches, I guess, that a woman does when
Yes,
it's n
definitely. When you're in love.
combination of nurture or romantic or touching. I mean, of course, there's
Yes.
scenes where they actually are kissing on the lips, or there's kissing and bite on the boobs, but it's like the difference between the tender touch that is meant to be something attractive and romantic.
And I
So,
think we
and then it turns into an evil bite because just the predator kind of compulsion kind of comes through, unfortunately. So it's like that kind of
We
give
talked
and
about that in
pull.
Bound. Exactly. The idea that a woman's way of giving the love. So when you see it reciprocated and it's two women, I think this is when it chimes. I like the point that you mentioned that for you, lesbian vampire movies are more interesting than straight. Probably because the idea of a male predator is still kind of creepy. I was interviewing the director of a short film about, like this rock star who kind of like invades a girl she picks up, like in a concert and goes and sleeps with her. And then the next day, the girl realizes that that rock star, a female rock star, is not as beautiful and wonderful as she is. And the director smartly told me if this was a man, this story would have taken a differently dark, a completely dark turn. So do you think it kind of takes a dark turn unless, even if movies try to tone it down? Like seriously, like a male predator biting you, but like the female voluptuous, kind of like motherly nurtures one biting and loving you. Is that it?
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, in the Vampire Lovers, there's the Madame Perdo, the French name. She's the governess in the house, and they suspect the governess when they suspect that there's a vampire. They bring out the garlic flowers, and again, the way the camera is like the getting in that the forced perspective of like, oh, there's the victim, and then it focuses on, but no, the flowers and no, the cross are kind of blocking in between, and the way, and again, the very smart way that our vampire Carmilla Ingrid Pitt kind of she goes after like the butler to get him under her control. She goes after the governess, and it is implied that the governess probably already was kind of a latent lesbian, that she did also have that same love from hidden for kind of her charge. And what do young women do it's in during the day by themselves, where she's just like frustrated and kind of, oh, we have to practice our German, but then it's like, oh, but the girls start reading their stories and they're playing with their BBs out, they're changing their dresses and taking their baths, and this is what girls must do behind the screen or something. So then it's like she also comes under the vampire's control and can't kind of handle it. And she's like, don't leave me. Like she thinks this is actually maybe like a love kind of experience. The vampire's like, no, 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 I'm just using you. So it's like the idea that, but the the people kind of are single her out, that they think she's the problem. They like lock her in and they say, okay, keep her away from the victim. So it's that I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's like they already kind of maybe vaguely suspect her and already kind of single her out, even if she's already obviously kind of really latent and repressed.
Yes. So kind of
Did I answer your
villainize
question?
her. In a way, in a way, in a way, in a very vampire lovers coded way,
Mm.
but it makes sense. Like it totally makes sense to me. Okay, but the idea of having this universe of, like where it's the femme mystique and it's the femme vampire and it's the woman, the kind of like the nurture where I feel like she is fed on by babies, by lovers, by everyone, but she's kind of like the feeding one now. She's the one who feeds. Do you think this is what makes an allure of a female vampire versus like a boring male vampire who, is probably a predator
Maybe.
because men are creepy?
And this is like the first and like the Karnstein, all the funny you could have a good laugh at kind of the names in this. Spielsdorf and Karnstein, I'm sorry, my German is just as bad as my French. But yeah, the idea that the Hammer has a couple other trilogy sort of vampire
Hmm.
sequels that there aren't necessarily as good. I mean, they're still fun, but how it's like a woman family history. It keeps going back and forth to the grave, and there was like a little prequel and sequel kind of flashback kind of bookends of where there's an alluring woman vampire that the man can't hesitates before he gets the sword out to chop her head off kind of thing. So yeah, and she has her first victim that she kills before she hops on over to the next house. And she kills a couple of the other village girls, which, as I said, again, you don't see the kind of perspective of her yet. You don't see her go full vampire mode until she has to go out and chase down the doctor and kill him because he's the one who kind of knows what's happening. Then you see her come full out fangs and attack, and it's rough and it's dirty. So the difference between the victims that she thinks she likes and just kind of drains and kills and then moves on to the next one compared to this one where she says, I actually really love you and I want us to be together forever and I'm going to take you back to my little, family vampire kind of castle kind of thing. So there is a sort of hierarchy in a weird way where it's like the combination of you're the predator and you're the prey, but yet it's like a not mother daughter, but it is like lover kind of thing. But it's still not equal, I suppose, in a way, because one is always the victim. It is still very toxic and unhealthy, kind of, which is a negative metaphor. We're talking about pride, I know, but I guess that is kind of the vampire kind of parallel. That was kind of, I think I spoke this before we talked about vampires.
Yes.
There was that Carmilla, a more recent version that I didn't really care for because it played, I thought, too loose with is this vampires or is this lesbians? And either way is bad. And I'm kind of like, yeah, no, I'm not here for that.
Cringe.
I need something more compelling than that. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, so when we're talking about having, like same-sex relationships or let's say LGBTQ or gay love on screen, I read Mike White from White Lotus saying that we need to make the gay love stories more transgressive. But then Oliver Hermanez, who directed very bold works like Mary and George, then it has like a lot of gay scenes and they were very brave and bold. And he also has the history of sound kind of now showing at Cannes with Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor, your whippersnappers, whom I know you don't like. And he said, no, like we need it to be out there. We need it to be bold. Do you think that now we're trying to show this, but we kind of like doing it sometimes for shock factor? Like for me, I
Mhm.
watched something like Queer by Luca Guadagnino, and I felt
Mhm.
like, okay, man, like I don't care. Unlike certain works where you feel like, yes, this is very daring, but you realize that, wow, I kind of like it. Like for me, All of Us Strangers was a film that had some really explicit scenes, but it was done in a very poetic way and in a way that serves the narrative. So what do you think? Should we go more transgressive so that we can have more mystique, or should we be like bold, or does it depend on the movie and the director themselves?
Mm. I do think there is a lot of queer baiting. And it's like, and maybe I recognize that because I'm not the audience to whom that would appeal.
I know
But
what you
it's
mean.
even,
Mhm.
and I think I even said this in the When We Rise, and that was from 2017 on network TV. And it had a lot of the women kissing and a lot of shirts coming off and bras and boobs and titillation. But the men, it was just like, oh, knowing glance. And oh, knowing glance, like a couple times, you got to see them, kiss, but it was far more tame and it was that people don't want to see that, people will watch this but not that, so I do definitely see that kind of, yeah, titillation for the titillation's sake. And we already have this debates of we're in such an extreme now where we've got, Honora is winning all these awards, but then it's like, oh no, but we can't even have people kiss in a movie anymore, and
Exactly.
oh, we don't
Gen
need
Z
sex
don't want
scenes.
kisses. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's so that's obviously, I guess, a larger symptom of what's happening in society. But yeah, I think you definitely notice when there is kind of queer baiting stuff, especially in horror. I don't care for Jennifer's Body. I know a lot of people love that one, and because I feel like that is very
I
debate.
do. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah.
loved it so much. Are you serious? Probably because I had a mad crush on Megan
Oh, that's
Fox
funny. But
in
you're
her
right, though.
heyday.
But the difference between, I guess, having the director where it's not for the male gaze, because I feel like
Yes.
the male gaze is where we get a lot of the lesbian kind of queer baiting. And
Mm.
back to Priscilla, when you're asking about casting, at the time, I don't know, 93, 94, when they tried to cast it, gay actors, trans actors, nobody wanted to play that part. They couldn't get anybody else to act, proper casting to play the roles. Everybody was too afraid, to touch something like that. And Guy Pearce said he did it because he completely wanted to do the complete opposite thing of Mike from Neighbors. That's what he had been at that time. Mike from Neighbors, Speedo kind of hunk kind of stupid stuff. And he was like, I want to completely, tear it down and shock everybody. And then Curtis Hanson, LA Confidential director, was like, okay, I'm not gonna watch the Priscilla because that's gonna change my judgment, if I'm casting you for LA Confidential. But nobody wanted to touch that. And again, that was a gay director, and the derogatory scenes in the movie were actual experiences of his, people saying, terrible things, not welcome here, that hate writing and graffiti and everything, so I guess, yeah, having the writers or the directors kind of proper storytelling and experience, but I guess we don't have time for that these days. People aren't
No.
willing to make a movie that's going to be for a specific kind of niche audience. So,
I remember
unfortunately.
we were talking about, I think our dear friend Zita was talking about the film and saying that this film was actually making a lot of money at the box office in the 90s. But now, if you make a similar, I don't remember the film, unfortunately, probably closer at Fatal Attraction or something, you would never make that movie and
Mhm.
make that much money because you have to have something, you know what I mean? Like a factor that draws in audiences. And how would you market that, poor thing? So I think now we don't have the luxury of creating art that is meant to tell something, but it has to have a purpose of getting mass appeal so that people would go and pay tickets and have all the press, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we talked about that before. That kind of 90s thriller is just an adult R-rated movie people don't make. And I was saying this to my husband because I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I live near a big city where, yeah, we can take a train, we can go see some movies. But I find it very frustrating that it's like now more and more the movies that I want to see playing that are this just shade of mainstream movies are
Yeah.
only playing in the city. They only get that kind of, they say it's nationwide, but it's basically like the second tiers of like limited, like, and then the next major cities. They never come down to our local movie theaters. Whenever I look at our local movie theaters, it's always the same Marvel kid movies, safe movies, whatever the big hit is playing on 10 screens. And even the cinema that we had here that was a more indie one. And again, now it just has to play all the mainstream, whatever's happening, Minecraft or something that was out big popular, or now the Thunderbolts or something. And I don't understand this, just the ideology of this, of like, so the majority of movies don't play in the majority of movie theaters. And if they do, it's only for a couple weeks. And it's like, so why does one movie have to be on 10 screens at every movie theater? Okay, can't you spread it out a little bit? The family audience. Yeah, and what family of five, can afford to go see, the Disney and the Marvel movies, multiple times these days. They can't.
Exactly. They
So it's
can.
like I don't know. The whole marketing and distribution is a bigger separate issue, but it's like the movies don't get to their audiences. So it's like, and not even mainstream. So it's like, where do these niche audiences find anything? And I mean, I think I've said this to you before. Prometheus, I think, is probably the only Guy Pearce movie that I saw in the theater up until until recently. And it was like, and I had to travel, to see those, so it was like, yeah, I didn't see Priscilla in the movie theater, but then I think of all the movies like I said, we had the Tu Wong Fu, happening at the same time. The Birdcage was happening at the same time. And I guess maybe in some ways, but Priscilla being the Australian film was a smaller indie. I mean, the clothes actually, the costumes that won the Oscar, I mean, was because the costume designer's mom worked at Kmart and they had like Kmart gift cards and like they were like stapling them into the dresses that fell apart,
So
after the
cute.
scenes or something, like very shoestring kind of indie, just telling its story to be true to itself kind of thing. But then we did have this American brief window, I suppose, where it was like, okay, let's make the gay movies and we'll cater them to the mainstream. But it was like, but at least we were trying. It's like now I don't know what the hell we're doing.
Okay. Because I feel like my love for blue is the warmest color is kind of problematic because I feel it's done for the male gaze and it's
But
exploitation.
that's not an American official
It's
American
French.
produced. I was going to say,
French,
was it like a
definitely.
British-French co-production?
You
Okay.
have Leah
hmm
Seydoux, who is now
hmm
thriving, and Adele Exarchopoulos. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. Who was a beauty when this came out, and I think I just enjoyed the film. But the more I grew up, I realized that people actually hate it. Do you think you have similar likes? Like, do you have a movie where you feel like, okay, I still like this film, but you realize it didn't age that well, that you probably shouldn't like it
Oh, I
that
don't
much
know.
with such
It's
sexual
so funny.
content?
Also, a separate shout out. Um, I was just talking to Andrea Revisionist Almanac because he's going to be covering. He's very reluctant to cover it, but it's come up in his window. Last Tango in Paris,
Oh
and I
my
said
goodness,
I saw that, and I thought, how did people praise this then? It's really disturbing
it's
now,
terrible.
but yet
Exactly.
this had been such a lauded, kind of film. A separate, slightly, but just again, toxicity 101 on screen here. But yet that was what was praised. And again, as we're saying, you said that's a French production.
Yes.
Um, um,
French cinema is
what
always
is
problematic.
your your other one that you love, the
Portrait of
girl,
a Lady on Fire.
Picture of a Lady on Fire.
Oh, but that one
Also, is
is
that a British production?
French again,
French.
honey.
Okay,
You
see,
know me and my French cinema.
The
Je
French we know.
suis
The
française,
French,
mon
the
amour.
French, the French go all out. No, but I'm just thinking of
J'aime le
again the
français.
difference between the foreign productions because I think you asked me the film that I love that um is off color now, but I think of a film that everybody loved that I found totally weird is the Call Me by Your Name. I
No,
thought
but I
was
found that one
very
weird
weird.
too because of the
But I
age
didn't like the
difference.
age. I didn't
I
like
don't
the
know. I
age at
didn't.
all.
Yeah, even back then, I felt like, but the age, you guys, how? This is totally
Yeah, I thought that
predatory.
was uncomfortable. I didn't think that was a romantic coming of age story.
Exactly.
It's
I
like
felt like this poor boy
it
was
can't be a
preyed
romantic
upon.
coming age story when one of them is already an adult.
Exactly.
Compared
This
to
is a
something like
baby.
Y tu Mama Tambien. I really loved.
Two
I thought it was very
boys.
beautiful.
Exactly. No, I want to know your problematic picks. I don't want to know the things that you're
Problem
against. Something that you feel
problem
like, okay, if
a
I say this,
problematic
yeah,
fix. I don't know. Because
something
see,
that you
I
know didn't
to
age
me, I would
well.
say some of the I would caveat that there are problems with Priscilla. Yeah, I
Okay,
will admit the entire scene with like the Filipina sex worker wife.
yes,
When again when
exactly.
I was watching it the other day, I said to my husband, "Wait, have you seen this part? Watch this." And he's like,
But there are
"What?
tons of
I'm
cringy
not
stuff in
watching
90s
that."
movies.
Yeah,
But they're still not labeled, I think, as problematic. But there are films that now you feel like
yeah.
I can't talk about loving them. I'll be hailed as whatever. But then you realize, oh my God, I can't hate you, baby. I still have a soft spot for you, my love. Which one is that in your Christian world?
I don't
The
know.
world according to
Gosh, I had
Pearce.
to think of that.
You're a very unproblematic girl. Can't. Girl, you fail me every time.
I don't
What of your
know.
lesbian love stories where you feel like, okay, this director is unhinged, he is insane, but I just like the movie. Like you feel like, okay, what is
I don't
this?
know.
You idiot, you're exploiting the girls, but yet I love this.
Actually, then maybe Buffy, honestly, because
Why?
that was very. I
Tell me.
mean, because you have the whole very wink, I get you metaphors and the once more with feeling musical, under your spell kind of song sequence, the way that's cut, the way that's edited, that's a sex scene for network TV that they kind of completely missed. Um, but then of course you've got the one lesbian has to die. Yeah. And you're like, what the hell, man? What the hell?
Do
And,
you think Buffy in
that
itself
was
is
purely now knowing what we know that it was basically was it behind the scenes? Yeah, toxic man wanting to rule the show. The girls had to play along type of thing. So yeah, that's a something. Yeah, back then everybody absolutely adored, loved, hailed Buffy is the greatest thing ever, and now it's like Joss Whedon's completely canceled. It's amazing amazing how some people stay canceled. I have not heard of him in a very long time, but yet now Spacey
And
is
he's
apparently being
crying,
awarded the can.
comparing himself to Trumbo, like someone who
Ugh,
was actually ostracized
no,
politically, not you, a
no.
predator, you freak. I
Yeah,
swear.
there's a big difference between the McCarthyism in the 50s, the Hollywood scare,
Are you
and
serious?
being
Exactly.
persecuted for a crime.
I
Yeah,
can't
no.
believe the audacity that this person has. And there is also a lot of cringy
Well,
people
that's
like,
part of the nature of just being a sociopath, I suppose. Sorry, allegedly we shouldn't say, but
but
but you
yeah,
can tell. Again, you can tell. Like when you go, it's amazing. You're right. Things that were fun, and our Amy Thomason has said this before that, and actually, Carice Van Houten was just recommending a book that was called "One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This." And it's the idea that now people are saying, "Oh, I knew all along about Spacey," but it was like, no, we didn't. People loved and praised and thought, "Oh my God, Usual Suspects, total twist. Oh my God." I remember watching K-Pax and thinking, how did he pull this off, being like this
me
weird
too.
devoid kind of
I love
alien,
this movie. I can't,
and
like
then
now I
just
can't watch it,
House
but
of Cards. He just
I
kept
love
getting
K-Pax.
creepier and creepier. And these things came out, and now you're looking back and you're kind of like, maybe he wasn't acting all the times he was playing this
Exactly.
creepy
When
kind
I
of
hate
part,
Seven. Do you know that
He
I hated
okay.
Seven? I swear when I
Oh,
watched Seven when I was younger, I was like, I hate this man. I feel like
mhm.
he is an awful person for some reason. It made the movie a terrible experience for me because it was like,
Mhm.
no, this is too dark. And when I saw his face, I like wanted them to kill him immediately because it felt like too disturbing. But now when I think about it, yes, whenever you're
And
seeing
again,
some,
you asked about, the appropriateness of, cis playing trans. Forgive my terms if they're incorrect.
yes, forgive us,
The
guys,
idea
please.
that when he was accused of a same-sex crime, that was where he chose to come out. And it was
Can you
like,
believe it?
okay, that's really inappropriate. That's
Slow.
exactly what we went through 80s and AIDS scares and fears of people presuming that every gay person must want to attack you or assault you and they must want, and it was like, whoa, inappropriate to try and excuse a crime by saying you're gay. And then it was like, how are people forgiving him for that alone? For that alone, so again, it's these power dynamics and whatever sinister things are happening is quite creepy. Quite creepy. And I mean, it's very disturbing. I mean, I keep seeing a lot of these science and statistics about there was like a global like health group that was on pace to eradicate AIDS by 2030. And it's funny because I see commercials for HIV medicines on TV where they say, once a month or once every couple months or something. The idea that no person would no longer have to die from AIDS, that we can manage HIV just like diabetes, just like any other kind of regular common illness. And the idea that all that coalition and all that kind of science funding is going to stop. Because we have other nasty bigotry, stupid, backward medieval thinking happening. And it's like, really, seriously, we've just completely backed up. Because I spoke to you before when we talked about When We Rise, because that was, didn't have enough time to get into the whole of AIDS epidemic and then watching it after COVID of like the expediting of COVID of like how a couple months we had the background medicine and oh look we made a vaccine and oh it could have been a lot worse than it was. It was already made worse because of the politics. And then it's like now we're just how far back are we kind of rolling, the science here
What is
for
going
the
to happen?
marginalized people. It's very scary. It's very disturbing. So it's like I don't know, Hollywood somewhere drop the ball on the line that they just stopped being progressive and now they're backing everything up and want to play everything safe because it's a very scary time. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Separate
Okay,
issue.
so we made like a very dark time of the episode, and we're
Sorry.
apologizing.
This is
But
why I
these are
go back to watching Priscilla, my happy place. My favorite part is when they go do their little song, "I Will Survive," with the Aboriginal bonfire because it's just like again two outsider groups that kind of come together, and have a great time and join in and sing along. And it's like that's what it's supposed to be about. This is what makes me happy.
this is what makes us happy. This is what we should watch to just feel happy. So celebrate Pride, being happy, even if the general atmosphere is like bleak and sad and whatever, and kind of like give us your picks as well. I think like we have a more focus now on particular titles, but we are always open to other things, and there are other movies that we love. However, Chris, what would you compile as your like to watch Pride pick? Like let's say five titles.
Right? Well, definitely Priscilla. I guess if people do like horror or they're looking for lesbian ladies, vampire lovers, I love. Um, I do love the birdcage. I do love Tootsie. I don't, it's kind of funny, I guess. I'm not sure if Tootsie would count.
And I still like Tootsie.
It's
Is Tootsie
it's a
problematic now? I don't know.
maybe, maybe, but
I
well,
enjoyed
even
this
I
movie
guess
so
the
much.
idea that it was having the conversation 1980 that we're having now of the idea that a man can't get a job, so he decides to dress as a woman, actor job. And he and but he, what he learns his lesson along the way, saying she's smarter than me. She's a better woman. I was a better man as her than I was as a real man. So it's like yeah, it's one of those. I don't know if it's rainbow adjacent, I suppose, but again, it's the conversation. And there's a great documentary. I did get a DVD somewhere of well, my Priscilla videos back there. Um, I got a DVD that had a retrospective documentary, like new behind the scenes of everybody talking about the climate at the time and what it was like, and how and Dustin Hoffman did talk about he did have like a an acting coach that said like change your voice, that women always end on a high pitch as if they're asking a question, because women always have to predicate something of, if I may, or well, I'm just saying, or maybe, I don't know, you think, like he's like, so women innately talk like that every sentence they ends with a question. And after Dustin Hoffman was like, I never noticed. He's like, now he's like, I couldn't unsee it. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
It's
That's
so
it's like
hard.
what you have to go through. So it's like we have, across genders, because there's more than just two.
Exactly.
We have to, have a lot of, conversation and sympathy and understanding. And it's like, I guess that's what I love about Priscilla. They're just trying to be who they are, whatever they may be. So I do love Tootsie. I guess Tootsie again is another one of those safe for people, like okay to laugh at it kind of thing. And the difference between Benny Hill type mockery that came before that, compared to the birdcage, being able to have, everybody can, it's not a joke unless everybody can laugh at it. Well, we talked about Bound before. I do enjoy Bound. Bound's a lot
Bound
of fun.
is like the
I did just see
ultimate
like a
Les
Joey
movie.
Pants list of like the best Joey Pants deaths, and I'm like, Bound better be on this list.
I'm sorry if you don't have it. It's your problem. 100%.
How many was that?
Five.
Pro
Now you have five, babe.
How many
Yes.
did I say?
You
What
had
did I
said
say? Four?
you
One
said
more.
vampires. Okay. Vampire lovers. You said, birdcage. You said Tootsie. You said Priscilla, and then you said Bound. You have five.
Oh, I do have
You have
five.
your
Okay.
list,
'Cause, yeah,
yes.
because after that, I mean, I really have to think because I mean, in a weird way, I love Desert Hearts too when I saw that. That was a new film to me that was recommended to us.
Ah, that was the
Um,
best.
because it's like I don't judge films like that. And I mean, like when we do things like this and I meet folks and say to introduce folks for videos or podcasts or something, then I have to go back and ask someone, wait, confirm your name, confirm your pronouns. Because I even though people now can advertise on their handles, I mean, unless you got the nasty government taking it away, shit. But the idea that I look at what people say, so when I go to a movie, I'm not expressly saying, I feel like an LGBT
Oh
movie
yeah,
today.
let's see a
I
Les
feel like a
movie.
rainbow
But
movie
I
today.
just see a Les movie
Just
when
like
I
I
want to
feel like
get
an action
hard,
movie today,
honestly.
or you know,
I only pick this when I want to see like two girls, like girl on girl action. I want to get hard. So yeah, I do this sometimes. I categorize,
well,
but
yeah, okay, you do that, but I don't do that. I'm not looking for that. So it's like it's hard
I'm
pressed,
looking
to
for
say,
the
you know.
story. I'm looking for a good movie. I don't label. Okay, Chris, we
Mm.
get it, darling. But yeah, whatever it is, your choices and your picks, you guys can recommend to us and you can tell us. But before we go, we need to ask our dear guest here, Chris. Chris, what do you have in mind? Because I feel like you have a lot now. You're everywhere.
True, I guess
You've
sometimes
become
you're in
international,
these,
baby.
these yeah, these scary times. Sometimes I feel like I've been doing too much of things, been too crazy, too
No,
hysterical.
you're
And I
doing
think,
God's work.
oh, because I feel like maybe this past month, maybe I didn't have a lot of things out, but I guess there's a lot of things already recorded or done in the can, forthcoming. But then folks will message me and say, hey, you want to do a podcast? Horror, fall stuff is coming up soon. So then I'm like, okay.
And you
First I'm
just
like,
jump in.
maybe am I doing too much? But then somebody asked me, I'm like, okay.
You can't. You
So.
can't help yourself. Tell us
Yeah,
the nearest
yeah.
things you have. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I did speak with our friend Clay. Ironically, I spoke with our friend Clayton, Men Who Like Movies
Men who like
podcast,
movies.
and
Yes.
we were talking about Get Out. And I said, okay, all the white people, rainbow people, and we're going to talk about the black horror movie. But okay, yeah. But then yeah, I don't judge this. I just go by a good horror movie that's layered by the racism and social commentary in it.
Exactly.
So yes, so I guess that might be coming out soon. I did have another Guy Pearce, A Spy Among Friends at Geek Vibes Nation. So I haven't been doing as much writing. I've been doing a lot of other projects and audiovisual media and DIY kind of things. So yeah, it's busy, crazy, and that can be stressful. But then I guess sometimes when you're in doing something and you're occupied and you're talking good and getting things done, that's a little feel good while I have Priscilla in the background.
A little
6 o'clock
bit.
this morning, I was like, hey, I can fall asleep watching The Vampire Lovers. Yeah.
It can be a bubble sheltering you from the outside world, and sometimes we need that in a way.
Hey, he wants to build a damn dome. It's like, didn't we re see enough dystopian horror things that warned us about, societies and domes run by AI?
I kind of hate this
I'll
world,
stay in my
honestly.
happy place on my Australian bus. Has been talk of a sequel to Priscilla. There's supposedly been a script. The
Wow.
everybody casting crew has been back on board, but their big question is it has to be good. It has to be worthwhile
Exactly. We're
to
the
the original.
wait.
So, I think that they're probably a couple. You know, it's like I didn't understand, like I said, half this stuff. Well, at the end, when they're doing the little Mamma Mia choreography and they go out of the frame and they come back in, and I'm like, now kiss. And I'm
Now
like,
kiss. I'm
oh, they
always now
don't. Like,
kiss.
oh, I'm
I'm
still
always now
waiting.
kiss.
Every time I see it, now kiss.
They have to be a couple. They have to be like it's a request. Pierce,
Hmm.
listen to us. And there has to be the sequel. Do it after the Ridley Scott movie, please. Listen to us. We're your biggest fans. Well, and I want to see Inside movie, which has some interesting
Oh
scenes.
yeah,
Are you
yeah, another
serious?
prison movie. Yeah,
No, that would be really
yeah.
hot.
Well, that's the thing. As we've mentioned before, because I've been going through this Guy Pearce rewatch. It's like I'll always go back to something like Priscilla. Yeah, the first time, you know. Um, but then it's like I'm always more intrigued by everything new. And even as we were all in this brutalist hubbub, you know, um, then all of a sudden, yeah, the Australian prison movie Inside was out with all this other buzz coming around, and it's like I'm always looking excited for the next thing. It's like, okay, I come back to, yeah, provocative films for a reason. And provocative can be as fun and lighthearted and lovely as Priscilla, or it could be, as terrorizing as Brimstone. So, who knows?
Exactly. It could be like both ends of
But
the
I
spectrum.
like films that ask questions, have these kind of conversations, and I don't think we get that in a lot of easy,
Modern film.
mainstreamy, breezy type of movies.
Exactly. And kind of movies that are trying to sell something and try to lure
Play
us
it
just
safe.
by,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, no, we need more
We
provocative
can't afford to
films.
play it safe these days, unfortunately.
No, no. I don't even know what we
Be
can
safe, but don't play it safe. Resist.
resist at least to the last drop of breath you have because this world we're in, this is not an inclusive world. This is not a happy world. So at least try to be inclusive within your
Yeah.
community, within your group of friends. Be there for everybody, accept, nurture, be present because you never know what's gonna happen a year from now. You never know. You never know. So yeah, this was our list, our mini picks.
What were
Kristen.
yours? You
Oh
said if we're shouting pride,
my
fun
goodness.
pride in the face of scary things.
I got a lot of films. I would definitely say Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but there's also The Lure, which is not typically your lesbian film, but it has like two mermaids, kind of like killer mermaids, and they're sisters, and the sisterhood is kind of
Mm.
weird. There's Ginger Snaps, which is about
Oh yeah.
like lycanthrope, and also it's a
Definitely prefer that to Jennifer's Body. Yeah.
I was okay, so I'm saying Jennifer's Body too,
Yeah.
correct? And I would say it's very sad and very depressing, but it's All of Us Strangers is a very black,
Mm.
kind of like a swan song, a meditation on a particular thing about being gay and about falling in love and about, I think, finding your identity, maybe coming to accept to terms with grief and death and things like that. So that would be also in my pick. But also Priscilla because Guy Pearce. I would always have a movie with Guy Pearce in my list. So yeah, this is my list for I'm not gonna like recommend my problematic faves. These are just for me to enjoy with guilt. But yes, this is my list.
Problematic faves, part two. No.
Part two.
Mhm.
Well, Chris, you were amazing as usual. Thank you
Oh,
so much for this episode, baby.
thank you. Mhm. Bye.